Hi, I'm Chris with Afflictor Broadheads, and today we're going to talk about how we quarter a deer hanging, so stay tuned. Some of the tools that you're going to need to make this a lot easier are a couple sharp knives. So what I like to do, I can do this entire deer with a small knife like this one, an outdoor edge style knife like this. Both of these have replaceable blades. The havalon I really like. It's got this nice thin flexible blade, very sharp, it's replaceable. The outdoor edge is a much thicker blade. This is really good for when I get into joint spaces and removing bone from the meat. But both of these are very nice. I also like to have a good filet knife, especially for removing the backstraps, and I'll show you that here in just a little bit. You can see one thing that's kind of consistent here is orange handles. I really like orange handled knives. I have lots of knives that aren't orange handled, and the reason I like these is because they're easy to see. If they get bloody, they're still easy to see. If you put one on the ground while you're gutting or while you're skinning or while you're even doing this process, it's really easy to find. So my point is, I used to lose a lot of knives, and so I went to orange handled to try to curtail that, and it has helped a little bit. So just a little tip there on orange knives. Anyway, the first thing we're going to do here is, while it's hanging, we're going to just kind of trim it up, get rid of some of the yucky stuff, that some of the fat, some of the fascia over the muscle. While it's hanging, we're just going to go ahead and do that part first. So as you come down off the lower leg here, you have these flanks. These flanks are really good for a burger, but I do like to clean them up a little bit while they're hanging. Go ahead and get some of this fat off, this muscle fascia, all this stuff that we really don't want on there. I'm just going to go ahead and take that off, and then you can bring this down to the ribs and take this whole piece right off, and then you can save that for your grinder. Same thing on the other side. Take off some of this fascia while it's on here. Save you a little bit of time when you get inside anyway. Then I'm going to go ahead down to the rib cage, and I'm going to cut this whole piece off and save that for the grinder. Now that I have this cavity nice and open, I'm going to go ahead and give myself even more room. I'm going to start at the sternum here, which is this little flappy piece of cartilage, and I'm going to bring this all the way down. What that'll also do is, if there's any blood that's still hanging out down at the lower neck, that'll help get rid of that as well. So you can see there's a lot of diaphragm intact here. We're going to go ahead and take all that out, so when we remove the ribs, we don't have to worry about doing that part later. Just going to get in here like that, follow right around the ribs. The diaphragm will come right out. Anything else in here that you just don't want to deal with, you can go ahead and get rid of that. It's a good time just to get it out of the way. Getting rid of this stuff just makes things easier for when you're doing the rest of the processing. Okay, so now's a good time to go ahead and get the tenderloins. I'm going to go ahead and get in here real quick though and take this descending aorta out. Help keep things cleaner as I take that out. You can just see this major vessel right here. Runs just under the spine, all the way to the back end. Splits back here and goes into the big arteries in the back legs. All right, so right here we have what a lot of people think are the best cuts of the deer. This is your true tenderloins. They're not attached by a whole lot, but they are mostly attached down here at the base and way up here. So what I like to do is I like to get my finger behind them, just kind of clean them out against the spine and the ribs as well. Give myself a little bit of space to work. That allows you to follow them all the way up to where they're attached, so you make sure you get the whole thing. Sometimes people have tendency to cut a little bit low and they don't get the whole tenderloin. You just grab it from the top, just free it up a little bit. You can see it just starts to pull right down. If you need to help it along, just let your knife guide right along the upper side of the ribs and along the spine, and the whole thing will come out nice and easy. Same on the other side. I like to go all the way up, come along the spine. You can free it up a little bit here. You can already go down here and free it up at the base if you like. And I just like to get my fingers behind it. And you can keep on freeing it up as you go down, getting every little piece of it. And there you have your second tenderloin. All right, so from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove our front shoulders. These are really easy to remove because there's no bone on bone attachment. They're completely free floating here, and so they come off really simple. Basically what you're looking at here is you have the lower leg bones, the upper leg bone, and then your scapula sits just like this big free floating thing. So you can see on the back here, there's nothing for it to attach to the deer except for by muscles. So all you have to do is get behind it, take a nice cut, and then you're just going to follow up and around. Get behind the scapula. And the whole thing should come off nice and easy. Same on the other side. Just pull it out a little bit. You can see there's a lot of broadhead damage here. Just follow right along. It'll come right up and off. And that's it. You have your front shoulders off, really simple. So since we're going to be quartering this and taking it inside to finish processing, this is a good time to get rid of anything that's going to just make your kitchen a mess. So since this is not usable meat in here, this is all damage from the broadhead. Just going to leave a lot of gunk everywhere while you're trying to keep your table clean. I'm going to go ahead and take all that off. So when you're looking at the area of the shot and you're trying to decide, well, what's good, what's not good, of course it's really going to depend on where that shot is on the animal. Anytime you have a shot forward of the diaphragm, you don't have to worry about there being any entrails or guts or things like that getting pushed into the meat to bother it at all. The only thing that's going to hurt you up front here is just the fact that you got a lot of blood, a lot of coagulation, a lot of stuff like that that really just isn't usable. You know, if it looks like mush, just cut it out and get rid of it and keep the stuff that looks good behind it. So when you can see this damage here, I have a bunch of unusable stuff here that's just been totally encapsulated with blood as the animal was bleeding out. But right above it, this meat all looks good. So I go ahead and remove that. And anything else that's left on this other meat, you should just be able to rinse it right off and that excess blood come off and still be a good usable piece of meat. So you don't really have to worry forward of the diaphragm about any ruining a whole bunch of meat with your shot. Now, behind the diaphragm is a different story. If you are using any projectile where you've cut into the guts and you've pushed that into the meat, that whole area is going to taste like whatever passed through it. So you want to make sure, you might want to cut a little bit more out of those areas. But for this, since it was a broadhead forward to the diaphragm, you know, we're just getting rid of the parts that have been pulverized. Everything else will be totally usable. Okay, so next we're going to take off the back straps. I'm going to show you the way that we like to do it. It's just a real simple way, but it also has a little trick at the end that'll help you do less cleaning once you get inside the process. A lot of guys like to start in on the ribs here and come underneath and then remove it away from the spine. It's a great way to do it, but the way we do it is we come in from the spine first and fillet it off, and I'll show you how to do that. The first thing you want to do is find the base of the hip. If you just squeeze here, you'll feel that there's a protuberance on both sides. You can kind of get your finger underneath here and see it. That's the spot where you want to make your cut directly across from to the spine. Feel it over here, come in directly across to the spine. And so that way you're getting the most of your backstrap as you can. The next thing I like to do is you can visualize the spine on this deer. He's been rutting hard. He's lost most of his fat, so it's really easy to see. If you're doing a late season deer or early season, especially a big doe that's got a lot of fat on her, you're going to have to trim a few layers of fat off of here to even visualize the spine. But today it's going to be nice and easy for us. So the first thing I like to do is I like to get on one side and follow that all the way down and just make a cut all the way to the neck. Then I get in on the other side, do the same thing, follow that spine all the way down, same position. And so now I take out the fillet knife. This is a good spot to have a nice flexible blade, but basically all I'm going to do is get in here, come along the spine with my fillet knife, follow the contour, and as I do, I'm going to pull it away so I can see where my next cut's going to be, and I just keep going all the way down, nice and slow. You can see the ribs here. Just going to keep coming right down. Now, as I get here, instead of cutting it off, I'm going to be really gentle and just come where I can start seeing that muscle fascia on the other side. So as you cut here, you'll see it start to free away, and then you can start to visualize this fascia right here. Don't want to cut that. So I got this whole piece freed up, and I got this stuff on the back. You can see this fascia. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to get my fingers behind it. And I'm just going to pull that away. So now I have this beautiful back strap to work with, but I left a lot of this garbage part here on the deer. All right, so now we're going to do the other side. Okay, I made my cut over to the fascia. A little bit more up top here. Then I'm just going to grab it with my fingers. Separate that at the top. You can hang on to this top part if you want, but it's not necessary. Just pull it straight down. And you're left with this gorgeous, clean back strap. Now, there's a second layer of fascia here that, because it's chewy, I do like to remove that when I'm inside, but boy does it look pretty. That's my favorite cut. So at this point, I like to do a little bit more trimming. All that stuff that just came off the back strap, since we're going to save the ribs, we're going to go ahead and cut that off, and I'm going to take as much of the extra fat and stuff off the top of the ribs as well. Anything that's not going to be really tasty to eat. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to go ahead and free this piece up down to the ribs. This is also a nice piece for the grinder for burger. There's one of those on each side. All right, so now down here at the base, we're going to deal with the neck. This is really simple. We're going to take the whole thing off at once and bring it inside to finish processing. The whole neck is a really good roast in itself, even with the bone in, but you can also remove all the meat from it for the grinder if you like, or for any other thing that you'd like to do, maybe some sausage or some jerky. I like to clean the meat off before I get to my saw. That way my saw isn't getting filled up with meat and muscle fascia, and the saw works a lot better when it's not getting clogged up. And there's your neck. The idea of most of this quartering and cutting out here is just to get everything separated and in nice manageable pieces, so when you get inside you can do all your final processing really simple. Now we're going to take off our rib cage. To do that, I like to come in here underneath the hips at the last rib. I like to clean off this space in here so I can see where my joint is. Now, the reason it's nice to get this cleaned off and be able to see in here really good is so you can visualize the joint space. Because if you cut into the joint space, things separate really easy. But if you're trying to hack on a vertebral body, you're really going to be going at it for a long time without a saw. But you can do this with any knife. Just find the space, get your knife in there, and you can see how it's starting to cut. It'll cut really easy. Just like that. Now the only thing you got to be prepared for is when it falls. You can see it start to free up here. There's the joint. Once you get behind it, just make that last little cut and you'll have the whole rib cage. I'm going to go ahead and take this inside for processing later on. So on the hindquarters here, I do things a little bit differently. I like to take these off and free it from the pelvis while it's hanging. So I'm going to show you our method for doing that. First thing I do is come in directly at the base here of the pelvis, and then I just follow it around. Now you'll see the first thing you're going to come to is there's a little bit of a protuberance back here. You'll go around that, then you'll come back in to the pelvis, and you're going to just follow that straight out right along the bone here. Do the same thing on the other side. You can see the bone here. Gonna come around it, another one right there, and then you're good. You come all the way down and out, and all you're left with is the pelvic bone right there. So then inside here, you're gonna do the same thing. Just come in from the side, give it a spin, come across this way, do the same thing. I'm just following the bone, letting the knife work itself around. You don't even really have to know what you're doing. Just kind of follow the bone like you're filleting a fish. You want to make sure if you're doing this for the first time that you're not afraid that you're going to hurt anything. Just get into it. If you can't make a mistake, and if you cut something wrong, you can turn that cut into something else. If worst comes to worst, you put it in the grinder, but you really can't hurt anything. And the best way to learn is just to get in here and have at it. You know, we all start somewhere, so don't be afraid. Just use what you got, get in there, and make it happen. Now, when you start to bring this apart here and separate the meat from each one of these legs from the pelvis, which is all this piece right here, you're going to start to see the head of the femur poke through. That's this right here. Now, You can hack at this all day long and it's not going to free up until you cut. There's one ligament that's hiding down in the middle here called the foveal ligament. You can see it right here, the tip of my knife. That little thing is tough, and that is what attaches this ball to the hip, this ligament, and you have to cut that. Once you do, you've just won the battle, because now you can come around the whole socket with your knife, really simple, and you can free that whole thing up, and it'll come right apart. Now at this time, it's a really good idea if you put a hand on your gambrel, because you're going to have more weight on this side because of the hip than you do on this side, and you want to make sure it just doesn't tilt and fall over. So as you finish this cut on this side, just following the bone right out, you'll see I'm free. And then you can kind of let up on here and make sure that it balances out. Sometimes if you have a lot more weight on one side, this will tip and fall off, and it's a lot messier to have to clean dirt and bark and stuff off your meat than anything else. So just want to be careful of that at this point. And so now what we're going to do is repeat the process on this side and remove the entire hip from this leg. There you go. Now you have your hip completely separated. Now there's some useful cuts on here, so you want to make sure you save this. You get these pieces off of here. You can use them in any of your grinding or your stew meat or what have you, but you want to hang on to that. So we're going to go ahead and get these carried in, and for the next part we'll be doing all the processing on all these cuts. So thanks for watching. I hope something in this video was helpful for you, hopefully at least the backstrap part, and give us a thumbs up, follow us. If you have any questions, drop them down below. Thanks for watching.